Hello, Assalamu alaikum and good evening. Welcome to another episode of the Classics Show. I am your host, Shabnum Riaz. So I've got, first of all, before we go on to the programme, I have to apologise for the voice quality at the moment. I'm down with a bit of a cold, so won't be able to take part in as much of a discussion as I usually do. But today's subject, today's author that we're going to talk about is Jane Austen. And Jane Austen is one of my personal favourites. She was an English novelist, and her works have been timeless, writing in sort of setting the late 17th and late 18th century. And the themes, her characters, her plots, her novels, they've been widely read, and articles and many reviews have been written. Her books have been also adapted into films, so she's a very popular author. And to talk about Jane Austen, today we have with us in the studios Professor Dr. Raja Naseem Akhter, who's Dean Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences at the Foundation University. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to join you, and thanks for inviting me, coming over and have a conversation on our favorite author, Jane Austen.
Absolutely, yes. She had the ability to really make her way into the readers' hearts and minds. And that's an amazing accomplishment. You know, so many years ago she'd written this, and that time of her life, the era of that time, the society, how it moved, everything. It's still so relevant today. That's the magic of her writing. Yeah. So if you could, tell us, how did Jane Austen emerge? What was life like in the Austen household?
As we all know, Jane Austen, actually to begin with, she was very little known in our society, and she was born in a family of 8 children. And her father was a clergyman, and the household was just a normal household in that period of time. But gradually she was sent to different schools for education. Her father was very fond of getting her daughter get education. And of these 8 siblings, she grew up somebody who made her mark and has lived in the history of literature. And she's a very humble beginning, actually. She started off in a very humble way. But then gradually she has to, she has to work to earn the livings at one point of time. Yeah. And the life hasn't been a piece of cake for her. She has to do hard work. They were displaced from place to place, dislodged, and they had to move from place to place to make the living with her sister and mother after her father passed away. And she saw a very difficult time, and she has come through, and I think that was a very good learning experience for her. She knew the world closely, and the world in real, what the people are, their attitudes, behavior, and how they treat you when you are good, and what they do with you when you are having bad times. So I think that is how its beginning was. But as we know that she was very fond of reading. She used to read a lot, and the novels at that time. It's, I think it's pertinent to understand that what kind of age that was, and the novel reading at that time.
Exactly.
Probably looking from here in the hindsight, about going 200 to 300 years ago, probably it is difficult to imagine what the life was. But imagine there was no technology, there was no, what women would used to do.
Exactly.
They would do household chores,
embroidery,
and that's what the values were. They were liked for those, and these were valued. But
painting
this girl,
and silk screens, things like that. Intricate.
But this girl, this was singular from all the siblings, because she had habits and of reading, and she was avid reading, and she always were very interested, and that's how she began. And you are also aware that she started writing under a pseudonym, right? She didn't write because probably women writers, novel writers.
That was going to be my next point.
Yes, exactly. Something the society won't be like ready to accept.
Exactly.
So she
and
was
not take her seriously.
not take it seriously. Well, that's yeah, at that age. What would they say? How good can a woman be a writer of a novel?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Absolutely.
So she had to take this name, and she had to make some earning as well to make both ends meet.
So there were many challenges.
Oh, huge, huge. I think in a way, these difficult times were also played a role in like grooming her personality.
Very true.
And introducing her to the world, the cruel world that surrounded her. And that's how she started. And then I think about what Northanger Bay Abbey is her novel. When her brother took this novel to the publisher under her name, he was reluctant to publish it because earlier she's been publishing under a different name she took up. And all of a sudden, like publishing a name under her Jane Austen name, that would have been not easily acceptable, and the publisher was not sure whether the work is going to be accepted, written by a woman at that time. But then gradually, I think she made her way, and then she catapulted into the fame. Later on, we know. She was all of a sudden, then people knew what a talent and intellect she was.
How long did it take for her to get the right recognition that she needed?
I think in the first 2 decades, she was absolutely, nobody knew about her, and she was very into the word that people hardly knew, Jane Austen. But I think when our works started beginning, it took time to like really appreciate the value and the quality of her work. It's only after some time that did the people realize that what she was actually writing about. And a lot of people criticize her for writing about only small household matters, marriage, love, and etc. But actually, I think later work realized that actually this is not only about these small topics, but what she was saying is universal true.
Exactly.
Universally true, and that's the beauty of her work.
That is the beauty. The beauty of her work is also that it's applicable.
Yeah.
All around the world.
Exactly.
And it's timeless.
Timeless.
You read many of her work and you're immediately able to relate to one character or the other, or a situation.
I would say that often, and too often I would say, we meet the characters of Jane Austen in streets.
That's
at
true.
home.
Absolutely.
In families, at parties. We come across and we can immediately say, oh, Jane Austen's
And
Darcy.
you're able to place them subconsciously, aren't you? You'll all of a sudden, you'll see a certain personality and you'll tell yourself, okay, no, that seems like Wickham. That seems
I think this is another quality, this quality of Shakespeare as well. Like, I mean, it is said about Shakespeare as well, that the characters he created and the way he described them, they are characters of blood and flesh, and you meet them around the corner every day in your life. So I think Jane Austen has lived because of characterization.
That's true, because
the characters she created were unique, and the way she describes, I think that's amazing. So we can talk later, but probably about her works as well, that the themes as well.
Yes, we will go into that.
But Jane Austen is, I think, you see, even there is a revival of interest in Jane Austen's work. They are being studied afresh from today's point of view, that which speaks very clearly that the work, the characters she created, they were not for that hard time. But they are also...
How much of herself did she find in her characters?
How much of she?
Of herself did she find in her characters?
Oh, autobiographical element, you mean? Well, I think a lot. Because the first thing and foremost thing is that probably a writer can't help to introduce herself when you're writing. Writing is what you are. You can't, I think, separate writing from you. So can you?
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, you are describing your own experiences. You are describing what is in your mind, and that is how can you like stand aloof.
Your own perception.
Your perceptions, perspectives, you have to embed into those works.
Yeah.
So I think very much of that. I mean, beautiful. One important thing I would like to talk about is that people say that she was talking about women, and a lot of people saying, and as we all know, that her works are about the society and place of women in that society.
And the hypocrisy.
The hypocrisy and everything. But you see that I believe that Jane Austen has given women what is still carrying the effect until today.
That's true.
When Elizabeth in Pride and Prejudice says that I will only marry with love for love, not for convenience, I think 200 years, more than that, from that time today, if you look in today's society of Pakistan, now women are voicing the same. Until recently, like how many women were thinking that they will marry for love?
And that is one of the central themes of her work, isn't it?
Yes.
The marrying for the social standing, the marrying for the financial security, and the marriages that could not take place because of those problems. The social standing got in the way, or the financial aspect got in the way. So that's something she continuously invents and reinvents. And as you said, many of those things find themselves still applicable to our part of the world.
Absolutely. I think women in Pakistan today are realizing that the marriage should be marriage for love, not marriage for convenience.
Yes, absolutely.
I think in our characters, when other characters get married for convenience, she turns a blind eye to that, and she doesn't even bother to even take a notice of that, because she says that's not a marriage. True. The marriage is when happiness. If you are trying to pursue the happiness, it is important that you go for convenience, or you have to choose between. And I think marriage for love, and that's the most important thing to do.
Right, absolutely. Okay, as we were speaking about Pride and Prejudice, and we were talking about her characters there as well, the opening lines of her novel.
Oh yes, I think Jane Austen has lived, and her particular fame lies in the fact that openings of her novels are great. They are so gripping, and they are so fascinating that once you start reading it, it is hard to put that away. You would like to continue and see what. Can I read some, if you like,
share them.
some of the lines?
Yes,
that,
absolutely.
that,
so our readers can also
that are
enjoy
quoted,
them.
That they are so frequently quoted.
And do also discuss them as well.
Yes, okay. We know that her works are Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, Mansfield Park, Emma, Northanger Abbey, Persuasion and Sedition. That was unfinished anyway. The other day I had a novel in my room, and Pride and Prejudice.
Right.
And I started, I thought, let me read again, because I read a long time ago, and it was time to like. I picked up, and the first line I met again, and that reminded me, and it is, she says in the Pride and Prejudice, in the opening line, it's a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Well,
and that statement
how true? How true? I mean, isn't it a universal truth?
Absolutely.
It is.
She's been able to cut to the core of a human being's needs within society. And she said, okay, now here I've set the pace. This is a truth.
Yeah. And I think if you read the first line, you know what she's talking about, and that is the theme she places right in the center. And then everything, the whole work revolves around on the same theme.
Absolutely.
And that's the beauty of her work. I think I've seen some dramatized versions of her works as well.
Pride and Prejudice had a long serial as well, and film, movies as well, adaptation. How do you feel about those when you watch them?
Well, can we first finish then
Absolutely.
and then come back
up
at the
yes,
ending?
yes, yes.
In Mansfield Park, she says, about 30 years ago, Miss Maria Ward of Huntington, with only £7,000, had the good luck to captivate Sir Thomas Bertram and Mansfield Park in the country of Northampton, and to be thereby raised to the rank of a baron's lady, with all the comforts and consequences of a handsome house and a large income. So how you see that in this, how if you possess something, how it leads to your fame.
Yes.
It is very important that
Yes.
you need to have these things to
Absolutely.
be like in the society. In her novel Emma, she says, Emma Woodhouse, handsome, clever and rich, with a comfortable home and happy disposition, seemed to unite some of the best blessings of existence, and have lived nearly 21 years in the world with very little to distress or vex her. Saying, she's not dismissing the worldly possessions as well. Rather, she regards them as one of the means of happiness.
Yes.
But happiness is not, material is not everything.
Right.
All happiness is not material. There's a lot more to that. But the opening lines, now she's, we've got to understand that these opening lines, we are not like considering these openings from today's perspective. We are,
Of course, you get
read
back
those
to-
lines from the
right.
perspective of the society of that
That time, yes.
18th century England, in the south of England, 18th century. People like living in a society is a middle society, and what kind of ambitions and values
And
they
you also
have.
had a lot of class difference as well.
Yeah.
That was set within, you know, the city living and the country
Country,
living.
yeah.
And,
oh, yes, that you have to keep in mind.
Yeah.
And probably she's talking about the upper class because she's trying to win. And in Northanger Abbey, no one who had ever seen Catherine Morland in her infancy would have supposed her born to be a heroine. So you see that again, that how people can develop from nothing. You can become something if you have the talent and intellect.
Absolutely.
So it's not that
Presumption is not
presumptions
something
are
that
wrong.
she
Yes.
believes in.
She, yeah, like the people you believed to, like in the beginning, not to be like they can come to like
Absolutely.
acquire anything they can.
And not to take things at face value.
A value, exactly. And in Sandishan is a gentleman and a lady traveling from Tonbridge towards that part of Sussex coast which lies between Hastings and Eastbourne, being induced by business to quit the high road and attempt a very low land, were overturned in toiling up its long ascent, half rock, half sand. So you can understand that how these people get down. And these lines are so fascinating that you would like to know what happened next.
Exactly. So the opening of her novel is
Novels
something
are
that she's an expert
Expert.
in.
I think she was,
Right.
I have no clue how many times she should have written.
Right.
And
We'll get back to the conversation. Right
Yes.
now we're having fantastic time talking about Jane Austen. Right now we're going for a break. Stay with us, don't change the channel.
Is he amiable?
Is he handsome? He's single.
Police.
Oh my goodness! Everybody behave naturally.
Mr. Collins, at your service.
In an era when marrying a rich man was the most a woman could hope for, Elizabeth Bennet was way ahead of her time.
I singled you out as the companion of my future life.
Sir, I cannot accept you. Don't worry, Mr. Collins. Tell her you insist upon them marrying. Papa, please. You will have this house. I can't marry him. And save your sisters from destitution. You cannot make me.
From Jane Austen, the beloved author of Emma and Sense and Sensibility,
That is Mr. Darcy.
He looks miserable, poor soul.
Miserable he may be, but poor he most certainly is not.
Do you dance, Mr. Darcy?
Not if I can help it.
What on earth have you done to poor Mr. Darcy? I have no idea.
I do not have the talent of conversing easily with people I have never met before.
Perhaps you should practice.
May I have the next dance, Miss Elizabeth?
It would be most inconvenient since I've sworn to loathe him for all eternity.
You may.
So rich.
By heavens, Lizzie, what a snob you are.
Focus Features presents the story of a modern woman
Mr. Darcy is engaged to my daughter. Do you think this union can be prevented by a young woman of inferior birth?
who discovered the one person she cannot stand is the one man she may not be able to resist.
Could you expect me to rejoice in the inferiority of your circumstances?
From the first moment I met you, your arrogance made me realize that you were the last man in the world I could ever marry. Do you not think him a handsome man?
Yes, I dare say he is.
Okay, welcome back to the programme. Before we went to the break, we were, talking about Jane Austen and her works as well. And, especially Pride and Prejudice, we were talking about the characters and we were talking about, the opening lines of the novel as well that are so gripping. There's some other quotes, from her novel, which are again, they show her the way she's mocking society as well and human nature. And she says somewhere that, to be fond of dancing was a certain step towards falling in love, which again is very humorous. True, and her outlook. She deals a lot, as the title suggests, the tussle between pride and vanity. So she says, in the character of Elizabeth Bennet, she says, I could easily forgive his pride if he had not mortified mine, where she's referring to Darcy, of course. So, these are some of the things that she has been able to produce, as she's also said, we are all fools in love. So again, as mentions Shakespeare. And also the things that she has said, they remain in the hearts of people. So her language as well, the use of the language. Tell us about that as well.
I think she's a master of capturing those things in a very simple language.
True.
If you read a novel, you don't come across like pedantic vocabulary and as if she's trying to impress upon you.
Yes, yes.
She's stating, about language it is said when your thoughts are clear. And when you know what you have got to say, the language is so simple.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, it boils down to simple words when your thoughts are clear. And Jane Austen, I think, just see how, like people say that she was confined to houses and her canvas is small. But look, the type of observation she has, so keenly observe what was happening around her. I think she was blessed with a gift, a special talent of looking and observing things with the key eye to see that what is happening. You imagine that can these ideas come to a mind, small mind who is not exposed to word?
Absolutely true.
Or an ordinary person? I don't think so. She had an extraordinary talent, which was phenomenal.
Phenomenal. And also her ability to put in humour in a very serious situation.
Yes, saying very serious thing.
It reminds me of the quote I'm just going to, when she is given the proposal by Mr. Collins, who's one of the characters in the book. And her father, her mother, Mrs. Bennet, has 5 daughters, so she's very, she's impressed upon this idea that my daughters have to get married very, very quickly. Very quickly. So when Mr. Collins comes and proposes, and Elizabeth does, there's no way she'll entertain that notion because she thinks of him to be a ridiculous person. Mrs. Bennet takes the case then to their father. And he answers, and also he's also a bit of a wit as well.
She inherited some.
Exactly, from her father. So he says to her, an unhappy alternative is before you, Elizabeth. From this day, you must be a stranger to one of your parents.
Yeah.
Your mother will never see you again if you do not marry Mr. Collins. And I will never see you again if you do.
If you do. Wonderful.
Isn't that amazing?
What a nice, gentle way of putting such a serious thought.
Yeah.
That's the beauty.
Yeah.
What always surprised me about Jane Austen's Elizabeth is, Elizabeth is not being infatuated by Darcy at all, not impressed by Darcy.
In fact, the opposite in the beginning.
Exactly.
They got off on a very bad note.
First, she tames her, and then she accepts the proposal.
Absolutely.
I think that is what women have to learn, and to do that. That not get carried away from the show or the
in fact, what you're saying,
class of people.
In fact, what you're saying in immediate reference to that, when she goes to visit at Pemberley Hall, and she looks at the grandeur of the building and everything, and she looks at them, and she has for a second, she has a thought that all this I turned down. And then all of a sudden there's the counter thought that said, no, if you had accepted him, none of your relatives would have been able to visit here. So exactly as you said, she brought him down to understand. That, you know, it wasn't okay.
No, not at all. She's not at all impressed by his wealth or his status, social status. Rather, she's looking for something else. The respect, value, care, and on the same footing, like to accept her as a woman,
with intelligence,
as an individual, with the mind and intellect, and accept what quality she has got, not like possess like some material thing, and then make her to obey what he wants. That's not her game. She is she's a very strong character, unlike Jane.
Jane is a bit of a sweetheart.
And she's tend to sacrifice a lot for others. But Elizabeth, she wouldn't do that.
And often you have Elizabeth telling Jane that, you know, Bingley's sisters.
She's younger.
Exactly.
But she's more intelligent.
Yeah.
And when earlier you said autobiography, I think
Elizabeth.
that is Jane Austen speaking.
Elizabeth Bennet. You do feel that she is
I can
reinforcing.
readily associate Elizabeth Bennet with Jane Austen.
Jane Austen talking.
That is where she is talking about. And and that's why, as you mentioned earlier, whether it is applicable today, that is, you can see that is even holds true today.
Absolutely.
Like the thoughts that women shouldn't go for material things. They should accept what they like at heart, because that's one big source of happiness. I think you would agree that even if you don't have much comfort, but you have a person of your liking,
who you're going to share your time
share
with.
your time, and you share the same thoughts, value, you have the same value, and he respects you above all. He respects you as an individual, as an equal partner. I think that's the biggest source of happiness.
So did she find him Mr. Darcy?
Yes, he did. But Darcy was not easy to handle. Darcy, like a snob, a big snob, and a man who thinks very high of him.
He does not enter into conversation readily, as he says in the beginning.
This is very interesting. I saw one televised version of this play, Pride and Prejudice, on Channel 4 in the UK. And if you watch that drama, I think I would pay tribute to the person who rendered it into televised drama. Whether if you look at those characters, the Darcy is always well dressed, like in a formally dressed tie and everything. As long as he's holding his position and he's like having a kind of quarrel or argument, if you like, with Jane Austen, and they are adjusting their status. They are trying to weigh each other up and then trying to bang them into positions that they belong to. And this later on, when he accepts Jane, the attire his dress changes altogether, as if he has come out from that shell of his pride and prejudice. He comes out and accept. As he comes out, his dress and outward look also changes. And that was the thing I really mentioned to my friends. I said, look, that in all those episodes we saw that Darcy is so formally dressed up, like as he's still like wrapped up his own ego, and then
it's very symbolic.
Symbolic,
it's very
and
symbolic.
the false vanity. And when he like accepts that, okay, Elizabeth, I accept you. I really would you love me? Then when he offers that, okay, I agree that my wealth and everything is nothing.
Because you know, the turning point of the novel is when she refuses his proposal, and that brings him back down to earth with a loud crash.
Oh, it does.
And he's amazed.
It's a slap on his vanity, you know?
Exactly.
And that's why I say she tamed him first.
Absolutely.
She brought him to his fold,
right.
And then said, okay, I accept you.
And you know, in the novel, as we see, when she, you know, she's very angry about other things as well, with Jane and Charles, his interference in that relationship. So she's very angry about that, and she's angry about his, you know, the way he's viewing her family and her connections. So when he proposes and she refuses, and then she says, from the very beginning, from the first moment, I may almost say, of my acquaintance with you, your manners impressing me with the fullest belief of your arrogance, your conceit, and your selfish disdain of the feelings of others were such as to form the groundwork of disapprobation on which succeeding events have built so immovable a dislike. And I had not known you a month before I felt that you were the last man in the world whom I could ever be prevailed upon to marry.
Beautiful. What a rebuttal.
What a way to...
what a way to tell him who you are.
Absolutely.
And how you should treat me. I think women of today and women everywhere should be obliged and grateful to Jane Austen.
That's women empowerment.
She gave them the language, the tongue. She gave them the like strength to stand on their feet and be counted, and not like accept other people. They come over and they overawe you with their wealth and possessions, and you submit to them. That's not a way of Jane Austen.
Absolutely.
First, you have to come to my terms on equal footing, and then I'll decide whether
I want to entertain that or not.
You are worthy of me or not.
So, what made their couple? You know, we've just, you know, talked about the dynamics that were going on. What made it so popular? This tussle, this taming of his vanity.
I think tussle is one thing, and then after the argument, when they settled into this relationship, and this is a kind of experience a lot of people might come across in their lives. So that's, as we've been talking earlier, these are the experience that people have seen. They have undergone those experiences. That's why Jane Austen is so closer to our heart, that actually reading her looks like this is my story.
Yes.
This is what happened to me. Oh yes, I know that. This is what happened. I remember this. Oh, how true. And yes, I can say from my experience. So all these make Jane Austen a popular writer. And that's what has lingered on her popularity and fame into even after passing hundreds of years. She's still as popular as might be like in 70s, 80s, 70s and 80s and onwards.
Absolutely.
When she came to known to the world as an author.
Right.
I think her popularity hasn't diminished by an iota. She's still,
in fact, as you know, you said,
enhancing and
the films and the dramas
are reviving, actually.
Reviving. How do you think? Do you think they did justice with the revival? You know, the adaptation of the novel with the films and the television.
Sometimes it feels that Jane Austen has written for a film. Like if you look at plot, characterization, the minute details which she paints and portrays the characters, as if she was writing for a play or a full film, film writer, like a film writer. Such is the description, such is the vividness and the accuracy of painting of character she did. And I think the more as I said, one thing that easily lent to this dramatization or filmmaking. And secondly, I think because theme is so popular, and so relevant to all times, it liberates her from time. It becomes timeless, you know.
Yeah.
And it is, and I think it's not that until today. I think in future, because she's touching upon those issues which are universal, which will remain as long as the human beings are there, as long as human and interpersonal relationships are there. These are all the relevant notions she has talked about. Her themes are very interesting.
She's also done amazing work as a sort of a amateur psychologist as well, hasn't she?
Oh yes,
because she's brought forth all those intricacies.
Yes, yeah. I think her works are matter of interest for many other academics as well, because they provide a psychological insight into the minds of human beings, the interpersonal relationships, how to handle them, and like how people change with time, their perceptions can change, their perspectives can undergo what kind of changes and what happen. This is from psychological point of view, these are very interesting things to study.
And that's also something that has led to the fascination with her work.
Because
you watch the character evolve.
Yes, I think this is the growth, as I read earlier, as a beginning lines from the novel, that you couldn't recognize that the girl you saw there is the girl that you see now. So the evolution process, how people grow with time through matured experiences and all that. I think that's a very insightful.
And in that era as well, you know, when we read her novels, you know, a lot of the correspondence is with letters. And so at that time, letter writing, the delivery of letters, the receiving of letters, the importance of them was something that you can really understand and resonate with. Where are we today? I mean, the letter writing, it's something for somebody who has been in that time when you have written letters and gone through the excitement of waiting for a reply. How can we revive that?
Well, let me first tell about these letters first. Joseph Andrew, when he was writing the novels, that's the beginning of the novel in the 17th century. And if you look at his novels, you would see that these were those mostly epistolatory novels, that novels are like developed as a correspondence between lover and beloved, and that actually played a very key role in developing the plot of the novel, taking the story further. So when the letter arrived, she read it, and what was the response, reaction, and what was the letter written in response. That was like something as if you are writing letters. So writing letter has been very amazing. And then you said, I think we come from the age when the letter writing was very common. And we used to wait for letters anxiously and eagerly. And postman was the most popular person in the neighborhood.
Absolutely, yes. And you would be in anticipation of, you know, those footsteps or somebody walking around. And is the postman here?
Yeah, but unfortunately, this modern technology has killed that, the fascination and that waiting for letters and writing letters, actually.
How has that affected relationships?
Well, the way Jane Austen, like in Pride and Prejudice, you're talking?
No, I'm talking about, you know, in modern times.
Oh,
as
in
well.
modern times, yes, that's what I'm talking about.
If we had, let's say for a second, if we had letter writing in today's day and age as the only way of communication, what do you think?
It would have been wonderful, I would say. That's one thing. I think it would have been great, but this modern technology, as we're saying, has killed that. These days people are writing texts in broken language and in such a short and nobody understands.
You miss
and the emotions that
that's true.
that
and the handwritten element of somebody writing, you know, and especially, you know, there was a time when we used to go out buy special match matching paper with the envelopes,
yes.
and then really worry about handwriting and how that would look. I mean, now if you have to write something
we
down,
hardly write, actually.
Many times.
As a matter of fact.
Sorry?
We hardly write these
Exactly,
days because we have,
We're
because of
typing.
technology, is typing
We're
and
typing.
cut paste and things
Yeah.
like that.
And then another thing, downside of that, is that our spelling.
Ah,
So many times
they're
you just
going horrible.
think, okay, no, is that the right spelling? Is it? So
People have forgotten everything. That writing skill, it has badly, I think there is a lot of research on that, that this technology has adversely affected the writing skills of people. They are nearly vanishing, really. And people are not good writers these days, except those who are into this business.
Yeah.
But ordinarily, people do not like to write, and they find it very tedious, and they can't write very well, I would say. And that is the reason, because so letter writing revival is a wonderful idea.
Isn't it a really?
I think that's
it can be done easily.
It can be done easily, but you need to motivate people because it requires time
Yeah.
and energy. I mean, we don't have the patience for that.
That is such a key word you just used.
Yeah.
Patience.
I is running out.
That is something that we really need to bring back,
I do.
regardless of age groups. But we need to bring back patience.
There is only one way that we can do. That is that provide the feel and taste of writing letter and reading letters.
Yes.
First, people would only do when they taste it, what it is like.
Right.
Those who haven't written letters, long letters and things, they probably wouldn't appreciate the value and worth of it.
Yeah.
It's only those who like those who had written letters in the past. They can
understand.
appreciate
Yeah.
the enjoyment and excitement of writing and receiving letters. But those who haven't done, but I think this is a time we think about this.
How can schools, colleges, universities, how can they, sort of get this?
I think that's letter writing at a lower level, at least, I think, in schools and colleges. That can be introduced, reintroduced,
Exactly.
and then tell people that how to write. And once, as I said, once they start enjoying it,
right,
they'll do it. Otherwise, they won't be. So, but anyway, Jane Austen is a wonderful as a writer, and her popularity I was always loved. I loved her the gentle satire. She the irony and no emotionalism, no strong words, no
very
big
softly.
vocabularies, no nothing. Like she's only writing so mildly. You see, the trick in it is that when she writes in a way that you easily accept.
That is
and you
true.
can appreciate.
That's true.
Somebody said that the flowers only open their hearts to dews, not to hard rains.
Beautiful.
I think similarly human minds are, we only respond to gentle teaching or whatever, or gentle persuasion, if you like.
That's true.
But we will shut ourselves against hard words and other things. Had she used like that bombastic vocabulary, probably we should have dismissed her as a
that is a very important
and we shouldn't have accepted those things. But she says in whatever she wants, is kind of way, in such a subtle way that imperceptibly and subliminally we tend to accept that. That's what
is one of the main things, absolutely true. Okay, so as you've just pointed out as well, that writing skills and writing styles are changing because we have gadgets now to capture our thoughts. We have gadgets where we're typing instead of taking out the time to write with a pen or a paper or whatever. So how much of that influences your thought process, the creative process, the final written word? How much does that influence that?
To me, this technology that stuns your creative thinking and abilities in a way that we tend to that cut and paste and not pay attention, right? Earlier, when we were writing with our own hands and when we were like reading them with a lot of focus, we would understand, and in the same process of reading and writing, we will create.
Yes.
But once you cut and paste the whole chunk into that, where is your thought in it?
Exactly.
You haven't processed it. You haven't absorbed it. You haven't imbibed it. You know, that's gone. That is superficially glossed over. And that you and creating process only begins when you absorb something, like different ideas come to your mind, and then you connect them together, and then from that connection and consolidation, if you like, then something emerges that's your own. But that's not happening in the reading process at all.
Would you sort of like say that the nearer we are to digitalization and to gadgets, the less we are in touch with the soul and the feeling and the being able to be the recipient of what exactly emotionally is happening around you?
Well, the more we use mobile and computer, we treat other people as computers and mobiles, actually. We take a yes or no straight away. I think that the gray area that used to be between black and white, and it required a lot of discussion and sorting out.
True.
That is over. Now we are either it is yes or no, either it delete or save. So
that is a very important point.
Yeah, there is only two options that we have go, and that then when you get used to this, slowly this becomes your habit and part of you. And we are pattern-loving people. We love patterns. Once we adopt this pattern of doing that, that's what we will do.
Well,
we need to slow down.
Right.
We need to go through.
Right.
We need to experience all these things, and then come up with something. That's we need to embed in our education system and curriculum.
Excellent. As we've run out of time, we've come to the end of the program, and I loved the ending that you were talking about. It's delete, save, yes, no. That's so important. What message would you like to give to our viewers? In light of Jane Austen, literature, the patients, and exactly what you've just said. What would you like to say to them?
I would like to say there's a famous saying by Francis Bacon that reading maketh man. Yes. Okay, we are what we read.
Yes.
If we want to be like human beings, you see today there is a shortage of good human beings, and that's what we need to why we the kind of this extremism and other things are taking place, because that humanistic part is now vanishing or is missing.
True.
So we need to bring that back. We need to slow down on life, not become machines. Let's be good human beings, and we can only get what we read. If reading makes the man, that's very important. We should get this habit of reading. Try to read these classic works. They carry a lot of wisdom. They give us very useful insights in human minds. They are very revealing with regard to how we should deal with other people, how we can knit into a society which is have binding obligations to each other, which we are connected and we take into account other people's feelings and values and ideas, and this is how we can touch heart to heart and soul to soul. That's what's missing.
Beautiful. That's an absolutely beautiful message. Professor Raja Naseem Akhter, thank you very much for joining us here today. We've had a wonderful, really soulful conversation.
Thank you. It was. I really enjoyed every moment. Thank you for inviting. And it was great to be here.
Pleasure to have you here. Okay, so we come to the end of today's program, and I'll leave you with the message from Professor Naseem that, we really have to be a good human being. And how can we do that? Get back into literature, get back in touch with books. Until next week, stay happy. Bye-bye.